Imagine a sun-drenched field. It's the year 2026. A farmer is walking down this long, meticulously planted row of trees.
Right, but he isn't driving a tractor or anything.
Exactly. No massive diesel tractor, no chainsaw. He's just holding this specialized pair of shears. And he reaches up to clip a branch from what looks like a weeping willow.
But the leaves are definitely not green.
No, they are this shimmering, burnished gold. And as he clips them and they drop into his hopper, they don't rustle. They actually clink like coins.
It's such a wild image.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. For you listening, our mission today is to explore this concept called phytomining and the rise of the biofoundry. We're going to unpack how the future of technology is quite literally taking root in the dirt.
Yeah, because that image of the farmer harvesting metal leaves, I mean, it is such a massive departure from reality today. Like, just think about the smartphone sitting in your pocket right now.
Or, an electric vehicle battery.
Right. To extract the lithium and neodymium required for that hardware, our current methods are just, they rely on brute force destruction.
It's violent.
It is. For 5,000 years, humanity's relationship with the Earth's resources has been entirely violent. I mean, we use dynamite to blast away bedrock.
And those giant excavators.
Yeah, excavators the size of apartment buildings, just ripping open these massive scarred craters in the earth. And in places like the salt flats of South America, we pump millions of gallons of toxic chemical brine just to separate out these tiny trace amounts of lithium.
Leaving behind these entirely devastated landscapes.
Yeah.
The scale of the destruction is just staggering.
It really is.
And yet we're looking at this biological alternative where the source material claims just 1 acre of engineered ivy could generate enough lithium to power 1,000 electric vehicles.
1,000 from 1 acre of ivy.
Which is insane. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the leap from a massive dynamite-filled open-pit mine to a silent, literal metal harvest feels almost incomprehensible. So how do we get there?
To understand that bridge, we actually have to look past modern technology for a second. We have to look at this totally bizarre evolutionary quirk that nature developed millions of years ago.
Because nature beat us to the punch, right?
Oh, absolutely. The entire foundation of this biofoundry concept relies on a highly specialized group of plants called hyperaccumulators.
Hyperaccumulators, okay.
Yeah. Under normal circumstances, if a seed falls into soil that is heavily contaminated with heavy metals.
Like, say, a dormant volcanic zone or an industrial waste site.
Exactly. Normally, it just dies. The metals interrupt the plant's cellular respiration and basically shred its DNA.
Right. Poison is poison.
Right. But hyperaccumulators evolved this paradoxical superpower where they actively seek out the poison. So if they grow in soil saturated with, say, nickel or zinc, they pull those heavy metals up through their roots and store massive amounts of them right in their leaves.
Which, from an evolutionary standpoint, the strategy is just brilliant. I mean, they do it to make themselves incredibly toxic to predators.
It's the ultimate defense mechanism.
Yeah. Like if a hungry caterpillar comes along and takes a bite out of a leaf that is absolutely packed with raw nickel.
That caterpillar is dead before it finishes chewing.
Exactly. The plant weaponized its toxic environment to guarantee its own survival.
And the underlying biological mechanism that makes that possible is just a marvel of natural engineering. These plants use highly specialized transport proteins in their root systems.
Okay, so how does that differ from a normal root?
Well, in a normal plant, roots absorb water and trace nutrients, and maybe they occasionally let a harmful metal ion slip through by accident. But hyperaccumulators, they construct these molecular turnstiles in their roots.
Molecular turnstiles. I like that.
Yeah, they're physically shaped to lock onto specific heavy metal ions like nickel and aggressively pull them inside the plant's vascular system. They even pull against the natural concentration gradient.
So they are actively spending energy to just gorge on poison. But, we aren't just sitting around waiting for these natural bug repellents to slowly absorb nickel. Scientists are taking that natural molecular turnstile and they're hacking it.
That's where we bring in the 2026 tech.
Right. By using CRISPR gene editing technology, they're going into the plant's DNA and fundamentally rewriting the instructions. They take the specific gene sequence responsible for building those transport proteins and force the plant to just overexpress it.
Yeah, so if a wild hyperaccumulator builds, say, 50 of those molecular turnstiles per root hair to pull in a little bit of nickel,
the CRISPR-edited version is forced to build 50,000 of them.
operating in absolute overdrive.
We are essentially installing a high-flow commercial plumbing system inside a willow tree.
That's a great way to put it. But we're also changing the target. Because nickel is useful, but it isn't the critical bottleneck for the 21st century grid.
Right, so we reprogrammed the shape of those molecular turnstiles so they only unlock for the elements we desperately need today.
Exactly. We're talking about neodymium.
The rare earth element for the powerful magnets in our electric motors.
Yes. And lithium, which is basically the foundational building block of our entire battery-driven economy.
Okay, so we're turning this passive organism into an aggressive hunter of specific elements. But the moment you introduce an engineered root system that hunts for lithium, you introduce a massive biological hurdle.
Right. The survival of the plant itself.
Yeah, I have to jump in here because my alarm bells are ringing. We are intentionally breeding a super plant designed to gorge itself on lethal toxins. How does it not just die?
Well, before it can escape or do anything else, it has to survive its own internal biology. Like you said, if you turn up the suction and flood a plant's vascular system with raw lithium,
The metal should shred the engineered DNA just like any other plant.
it should. But the mechanism that keeps our engineered lithium tree from poisoning itself is this massive expenditure of daily energy to build microscopic containment units.
Okay, so the plant realizes it's full of poison, so it refuses to let the lithium float freely in its sap. It stores the minerals in tiny crystal pockets called vacuoles.
Or inside structures on the surface of the leaf called trichomes.
I just picture the plant constantly building millions of microscopic biological safes,
Yeah.
locking the heavy metals away behind thick cellular walls so the rest of the leaf can just keep performing photosynthesis normally.
And maintaining those biological safes takes a staggering caloric intake. The plant is constantly repairing the walls of those vacuoles to prevent a lethal internal leak.
Wow.
But by packing all that metal into those confined spaces, the physical properties of the plant undergo a complete metamorphosis.
Right, because locking away lithium or neodymium in crystal pockets fundamentally changes how the plant interacts with light and gravity.
This is where it gets really visually stunning.
It really does.
Yeah.
Here's where the visual reality of a lithium orchard becomes just completely alien. Because the leaves are totally packed to the brim with microscopic metal crystals, they take on a literal metallic sheen.
They act like millions of tiny mirrors.
Yeah. If you were to walk through one of these biofoundries, you wouldn't see the matte greens and browns of a natural forest. You'd be surrounded by vibrant, reflective teal, shimmering silver, or burnished gold.
And it entirely depends on which specific element that sector is harvesting.
But it's not just pretty. The physical weight of the forest is equally jarring. A canopy packed with solid metal is incredibly dense.
Right, a single mature branch of an engineered neodymium willow could easily weigh 50 pounds.
50 pounds. The stress on the trunk alone means the plant has to reinforce its bark with structural compounds just to keep from snapping under its own weight.
And the acoustics alone would be haunting.
Oh, I was just thinking about that. Because when a strong wind blows through a standard oak tree, you get that soft, rushing, organic whoosh sound.
But when the wind hits a lithium orchard, those dense, heavy leaves would strike each other.
They would chime.
Exactly. The entire forest would clatter and ring. It completely blurs the line between organism and machinery.
It's a beautiful image. But a chiming forest and a 50-pound branch brings up a pretty glaring logical roadblock for me.
Okay, what's that?
Well, the plant has this incredible high-tech plunning system. It has the vacuoles to store the metal safely. But a 50-pound branch implies the plant successfully pulled 50 pounds of solid metal out of the dirt.
Right.
But most of the Earth's valuable lithium isn't just sitting loosely in fluffy, wet potting soil. It's locked inside solid rock.
Deep in quartz and bedrock.
Yeah. And tree roots, I don't care how heavily edited by CRISPR they cannot chew through a boulder. The turnstiles only work if the metal is already liquefied. So how on earth is a delicate root system sipping lithium out of a solid slab of ore?
That is the million-dollar question. And the Biofoundry relies on this hidden microscopic symbiosis to solve that exact problem, because the engineered plants are actually only half of the equation.
Okay, who's the other half?
The invisible heroes.
Bioleaching bacteria.
Bioleaching bacteria. Yeah. These are naturally occurring extremophiles. They live deep in the soil, and they actually thrive on the surface of rocks. And their metabolic process involves secreting highly specific natural acids as a byproduct of their digestion.
Oh, wow. So when you introduce a swarm of these bacteria to raw ore, those acid secretions begin attacking the sulfide bonds that hold the solid rock together.
Exactly. They are essentially pre-digesting the bedrock. They break down the dense mineral matrix at a molecular level and dissolve the rock into a bioavailable liquid.
So they transform a solid boulder into a subterranean mineral soup.
Mineral soup, yes. And that bioavailable soup is what the engineered roots actually drink.
Okay, so the plant absorbs the liquefied matrix, the molecular turnstiles filter out the unwanted elements, and the pure lithium is pumped at the trunk and locked into that chiming canopy above.
That's the process. And the contrast between this symbiotic process and our current reality is just jarring.
I mean, think about the open pit mine we discussed earlier. The environmental footprint of this bacteria-plant partnership is practically invisible by comparison.
Oh, it's 100% silent.
Right. There are no diesel-chugging dump trucks hauling tons of rock. There are no toxic chemical runoff pools.
And because you're cultivating a massive root system and adding organic biomass to the area, you are actually remediating the soil quality.
Which is huge. We're talking about a commercial mining operation that pulls thousands of tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and pumps out pure oxygen.
Instead of smog.
Yeah.
It completely inverts the extraction paradigm.
And that inversion, it triggers second-order effects that go far beyond just cleaning up the environment.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if your mining operation only requires sunlight, soil, engineered seeds, and bacteria, then the global monopoly on heavy machinery and capital, it no longer dictates who controls the world's resources.
Right. The entire geopolitical map gets completely redrawn.
Let's talk about that. We shift from traditional geography to phytogeography.
Yeah, because today, the nations that dominate the extraction industry, countries like the USA, China, Australia, they hold that power because they have the billions of dollars in capital required to build and operate the infrastructure.
And often they have the regulatory environments to allow for massive ecological disruption. It's an economy based entirely on brute force.
But when brute force becomes obsolete, leverage shifts dramatically. Regions of the world that were historically classified as resource poor suddenly hold all the carts.
Because maybe a nation's mineral deposits were buried too deep for a traditional excavator to reach profitably, right?
Or the ore was considered too low grade to justify the astronomical cost of chemical separation. But under the Biofoundry model, low-grade ore isn't a deal breaker at all.
It just means the harvest takes a few extra seasons. You don't need a billion-dollar digging operation. You just need patience.
Exactly. Consider the Sahara Desert.
Oh, the Sahara. Right now, it's millions of square miles of vast, sunny, seemingly empty space.
But that sand contains immense amounts of trace minerals, including silica and rare earths. It's just way too diffuse to run a traditional mining operation.
But the sheer scale of the Sahara turns that diffuse concentration into an unprecedented asset. If you blanket 1 million acres of the Sahara with these engineered bio-ore seeds, you transform a barren landscape into an economic powerhouse.
The desert could literally grow the silicon and rare earth components for solar panels right out of the very sand that those panels will eventually sit on.
It's democratizing access to natural resources.
Yeah.
A nation without a massive industrial base could literally grow its own tech infrastructure.
It sounds perfect, right?
It does. But we have to pump the brakes here, because this brings us right back to the glaring red flag I was touching on earlier. 1 million acres of engineered heavy metal gorging plants sitting in the desert sounds like a utopian dream until biology does what biology always does.
It spreads.
It spreads. We've all seen how invasive ivy can choke out a forest. Imagine a metallic weed. How do you even weed a garden made of iron?
Yeah, this is what we call the toxic blossom scenario. And it is the massive shadow hanging over the entire phytomining revolution.
Because if these hyper-engineered plants escape the controlled, monitored boundaries of a biofoundry, the ecological consequences would be catastrophic.
Beyond catastrophic. We aren't just talking about a weed choking out your tomato plants. We are talking about a plant designed to aggressively suck the iron and zinc straight out of a local ecosystem.
And the threat multiplies exponentially when you consider the reproductive cycle. What happens when a heavy metal hyperaccumulator blooms and releases pollen into the wind?
Well, you get gold pollen.
Oh, pollen.
Yeah. The flower of an engineered neodymium tree would release microscopic grains of highly concentrated metallic dust.
And to a honeybee or a local butterfly, that isn't nectar. It is a lethal, concentrated toxin.
Exactly. A single blooming metallic invasive could completely decimate an entire local pollinator population in a matter of days.
And think about how we currently manage invasive species.
Right.
We send in agricultural teams with sprayers full of chemical herbicides.
But these engineered plants drink poison for a living.
Right. They evolved in highly toxic environments, and their genetics have been supercharged by CRISPR to withstand cellular damage.
Combine that with the thick, metallic, crystalline skin of their leaves, and traditional herbicides would just bounce right off.
They are the ultimate biological armor. You could not eradicate them with chemicals.
Managing a lithium orchard would require regulatory and security frameworks that are completely alien to modern agriculture. You can't just plant these trees behind a barbed wire fence.
Right, you'd need what? Like nuclear power plant levels of security.
Exactly. A biofoundry would demand the exact same rigorous, multi-layered containment protocols as a nuclear facility, because a containment breach is just as disastrous.
One stray seed carried 10 miles away in the digestive tract of a bird or blown by a strong storm system could take root in a pristine national park.
And it would immediately begin poisoning the soil around it, outcompeting native flora.
Eventually turning a vibrant habitat into a biological dead zone where only the metal eaters can survive.
It really forces us to walk an unprecedented tightrope. On one hand, we have the potential to democratize global wealth and power human civilization with carbon-negative infrastructure.
But the cost of a mistake is unleashing an unstoppable metallic plague on the natural world.
It's terrifying, but despite those immense risks, the trajectory of this technology offers a really profound opportunity for redemption.
And that redemption arc is perhaps the most compelling part of this entire deep dive for me. We started this conversation looking at the deep, ugly scars of our current mining practices.
The massive craters, the toxic runoff pools, the miles of dead earth.
Yeah. But phytomining allows us to return to those exact sites. We can take the most polluted, abandoned, open-pit mine sites on the planet, places we wrote off as ecologically dead forever, and we can just plant these seeds.
And the hyperaccumulators will utilize those remnants. They'll slowly, methodically draw the legacy toxicity right out of the ground.
They transform those dead zones into lush, silver-green carpets. We can literally take the toxic wreckage of our industrial past and use it to grow the most economically productive forests in history.
We are healing the earth through the act of harvesting it.
Exactly.
And that dual action of healing and harvesting, it represents a fundamental paradigm shift for our species. I mean, we're transitioning away from a civilization that builds its technology through extraction, destruction, and mechanical assembly.
Toward a civilization that cultivates its technology.
Right. When the foundational components of a smartphone are grown from a seed in a glass vat of bioleached slurry, the rigid boundary separating nature from technology completely dissolves.
They become one and the same.
They really do.
And that realization leaves us with a truly provocative idea to consider. For everyone listening, if the hardware powering our lives is eventually grown like a crop, what happens at the end of its life cycle?
Oh, that's a wild thought.
Right. Will the e-waste of the 2030s just be tossed into a backyard compost bin along with your apple cores and grass clippings to break down naturally?
Or looking at the darker implications?
Yeah, if our laptops and electric vehicles are fundamentally biological structures, will they suddenly become vulnerable to biological threats?
Wow.
Imagine your smartphone crashing, not because of a bad software update, but because its internal motherboard caught a literal metallic plant blight.
That entirely redefines the concept of a computer virus. I mean, a localized agricultural disease could suddenly crash a regional power grid.
It forces us to rethink everything we know about the devices we rely on. So the next time you look at a tree in your neighborhood or even just the dirt beneath your feet, remember that farmer in 2026. The future of human progress might not be forged in massive factories with fire and steel.
It might be grown.
Grown, leaf by golden leaf, clinking like coins in the sun. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll see you next time.